Hey, what's up guys, welcome to the first ever episode on White Lines F1, or technically the second video, but this is the first ever podcast recorded on this channel. This episode specifically will be about the first wave of testing. As we speak right now, it is currently the second wave of testing, but that will be talked about in another video. But before I kick off my podcast, my discussion on testing that's already happened, first I'll explain how this channel is going to work. So the way this channel is going to be run is that after the first two episodes, which is this one and the next one, which will be about testing, it's going to be the season. So that means that I will watch practice, quali and the race itself. So the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the race weekend. And then on the Monday, which will be the day after the race itself, I'll be most likely at Lewis's recording my podcast, my episode, talking about what happened, you know, my discussions about the team performances and so on, you know, just discussing that race weekend in itself. Those episodes will either be out on that same day or probably Tuesday. I would put my money on Tuesday. But until then, which is still a couple of weeks away, we're going to talk about testing. So test one specifically. I'm just going to discuss this basically team by team, just to make it kind of easy for you to work it out, easy for you to understand, because if I talk about it if I talk about testing in one sweeping statement effectively, you'll get lost. I'll be jumbling too much. So I'm just going to do it team by team. So first of all, Mercedes, obviously they won the Constructors last year. Vettel? Rosberg was the world champion. They're obviously the benchmarker every season until somebody eventually dethrones them. So we're going to start off with them. So Mercedes in test 1 did 558 laps. The fastest lap time they did was Valtteri Bottas. That was a 1:19.7 on the Ultra Softs. So Bottas, as I said, set the fastest lap for Mercedes during test 1. And I'll be honest, when Bottas first came to Mercedes, when it was first announced, I wasn't particularly happy. I didn't think last year he had a great season. I know he went through that spell at the start of last season or the season before that where he was doing really well. He didn't really impress me after that. I thought he kind of went a little bit dry. I didn't think it seemed to make too much sense to put him in because I personally was just a massive fan of Pascal Wehrlein. He was young driver of the season. I thought it was logical, put this guy in. However, I suppose they might have learned from Sergio Perez, because I can't remember what team he started out at, but when he was still young, he then went to McLaren, and for those of you guys who don't know, that didn't really go that well for him. So I guess they just didn't really want to have a new kid in the fastest car on the track. Makes sense, you don't want to stuff that in the wall. Shout out to Lance Stroll. So I think it's fair to say that Bottas more or less proved himself throughout the week. I want to make it clear though that Hamilton didn't have the most exciting test period, because for the most part he was mainly doing race simulation, and basically that means that he was basically running laps consistently on tyres that were getting worn and worn out. So he didn't really have a lap, or didn't get the opportunity to do a quali style lap where he put on the fastest engine setting, he had the low fuel, and he had the most optimal tyre and so on. To be fair, Bottas probably didn't, but I think no team, in fact I'm certain no team in the entire paddock had a quali style lap, because it's testing and it's only testing 1, not testing 2. You don't really want to give away everything straight away. The relationship between Bottas and Hamilton so far actually seems pretty good. It's kind of, I'm really hoping it doesn't turn out how it will with Hamilton and Rosberg, because them two at the start when they were together, they were like best mates. Obviously those two came up together through karting. They seem like best of friends, but by the end of the season, and by the end of the season that's just finished, they were toxic together. And I really hope this doesn't happen with Hamilton and Bottas, because Bottas is a lovely human being, genuinely. Hamilton's a bit of a cocky character, but people like him for that. I think he's great. I think he's got loads of charisma. I think that's what's needed from the sport. I just hope them to work together, and so far the signs are looking really good. So far the relationship they have to each other, the chemistry they have within the team is going really well, and they're getting the most out of each other so far from what we can see on the outside. So far the relationship between each other is very good. So as I said earlier, Mercedes did the most amount of laps, 558 in fact, which is the most, unsurprisingly, of any team during test 1. Bottas did most of those. Hamilton got a little bit unlucky that he didn't really get to do too many, because unfortunately when he was going out, the car itself actually had a couple of electrical issues. That won't be a statement of Mercedes's of their reliability, because they still did the most amount of laps. It was a small issue, got fixed relatively quickly. It just meant on day 4, on the final day of testing, he couldn't really do any laps. In fact, he didn't at all. But yeah, generally, as expected, Mercedes had a really good testing. Now on to Red Bull. So Red Bull did 294 laps. Ricciardo did the fastest lap time, which was a 121.153 on the softs. Pretty good. Obviously, that's not the most overwhelming thing. In fact, to be honest, it's all right. It's pretty solid, but it's, considering they're supposed to be, the second best team out there, maybe a little bit underwhelming. But you got to remember, you got to take in the fact they were only using the softs. There's no way they had the engine up to maximum, and generally, I don't think they really pushed the car in itself. They definitely weren't doing quality style laps. They weren't pushing it half as much as Mercedes were, probably because they weren't really able to. But it's interesting the way that they've discussed, Adrian Newey in particular has discussed the car, because obviously now in 2017 all these new regulations have come with aero changes. The cars are far more aerodynamic, and somebody said that these are going to be the fastest F1 cars in history. I don't know about that, but it's possible, I suppose. But you get what I mean. These cars are considerably faster than last year, and it's interesting that people noticed that the Red Bull's body, the actual car body, was actually a very simple, very low drag. And when asked, Adrian Newey said, "I'm a simple man, I like to keep things simple," kind of shunned the question, just said he wanted to keep it nice and clean. Fair enough, okay, but that's a very cheeky response, and we can see straight through you. Obviously, Red Bull are using a Renault engine. It is by far and away not the fastest engine available. It's definitely not the fastest power unit. That's Mercedes first, and then probably Ferrari, maybe maybe the Renault, but they're probably playing like third fiddle, not even second. So the ultra low drag body is simply to compensate. Got the advantage in the corners, in my opinion. The cornering is where the Red Bull shines, and basically because on the straights they haven't really got the punch. In fact, I think the difference in horsepower is about 100 brake horsepower difference, which is huge. So obviously they've used that body to kind of compensate for that, because otherwise they have no chance of competing, especially on the straight. Imagine tracks like Mexico. Imagine Bahrain. Those tracks which are really power unit orientated. They'd be screwed, absolutely screwed otherwise. Overall, not a bad test for Red Bull. They didn't really push it. In fact, it was kind of underwhelming. It's mainly going to be shown in test 2 how good they really are. They had a couple of reliability issues here and there, but generally not too bad. So to be honest, can't really say too much about them. We don't really know. Next up is Ferrari, and they did 468 laps, which was I think I'm right in saying the second most laps that anyone did. Vettel did the fastest of a 119.952 on the softs, which is actually a really quick time. And if you take into account the fact that they use softs, not ultra softs, they would actually have been quicker than Mercedes. Let that sink in. And I guess with that in mind, I guess the question is, are they the real deal this year? Interestingly, last year and I think the year before that, they've really hyped up how their season's going to go. Maurizio Arrivabene, or whatever his name is, he really hyped up the team. He was like, Ferrari is back, this is going to be our year, we're going to kill it, we're going to have the prancing horse back and everything. And they really did not shine at all. This year, they've learnt their lesson, they're making sure they don't eat their words, they're staying nice and quiet. But to be honest, their performances would back up that statement if they were to make it, because so far, but they're doing really well. In fact, only Ferrari and Mercedes did more than 2,000 kilometers of running. So that also tells you that that engine and that car overall is pretty damn reliable. And you have to remember that it was Bahrain, literally the second race on the calendar last season, that Vettel broke down before actually starting the race. They were on the formation lap and he just broke down. So the fact that they've got, well, apparently they've got reliability sorted out already, well, that is a very good sign indeed. Now let's move over to Force India. So they did 278 laps, which is not bad, it's respectable. Esteban Ocon did the fastest laps of a 122.509 on the super softs. Not bad, it's a decent time, but it's obvious throughout testing that they held back. In fact, I'm certain there's definitely more power that can come out of that Mercedes engine. They've got the exact same power unit as Mercedes. They have to be legally. They've definitely got more to come out of the chassis, of the aerodynamics. They've definitely held back, no doubt. However, considering they've did my voice just crack? However, considering they've got a decent amount of laps under their belt, not massive, but a decent amount, and they've got a reasonable lap time. Nothing special, but it's obvious that they held back. I say they're looking at a decent spot. They're looking okay. I think they were only 7th fastest on the timesheet, but the fact they held back, I think they're quietly confident. I kind of want to quickly make the shout out to Ocon, because I was really surprised, because I wasn't particularly impressed by him. Obviously he was was he with Manor? Yeah, he was with Manor last year, and he had Pascal Wehrlein who was sitting next to him, and Pascal Wehrlein was the young driver of the year, so I suppose he was kind of like pushed into a shadow as a result. I wasn't really impressed, but he is a good driver. He did really well in GP3. In fact, he was I think it was GP3 champion. He's in the Mercedes Junior Driver Scheme, so he's definitely got talent, and it's slowly starting to show. In fact, Force India are really asking him, really pushing him to challenge Perez. Perez obviously has far more experience than him. Perez actually, I really rate. I love Perez. I think it's brilliant. Perez has got a couple podiums. Obviously, this definitely is a chance for Ocon to start getting some podiums. I think he can do it. I think he will do okay. So now to Williams. They only did 213 laps. Massa did the fastest lap of a 122.076, which was on the soft tyres. Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll. He crashed 3 times. In fact, he crashed so many times that when day 4 came along, they literally were like, we literally don't have a car to drive. We literally can't, we can't test on day 4, on the final day, because you've crashed all of our bloody cars. Cheers, dude. You probably guessed, I don't really like the guy. Well, I mean, I don't dislike him. I just don't approve of the fact that the only reason he's got his seat is because he's got money. And that is just the fact, that's the only reason he's got the seat this season. Because he's a quick driver. He's a really quick driver. He did really well in GP3. He shone massively, but he jumped from GP3 straight into an F1 car. That jump is massive. That is so much more speed. There's so much more aerodynamics. It's so much harder to brake. The G-forces are insane. The difference between GP3 and a fully fledged F1 car, especially one as fast as Williams, so I hope it's going to be quick, especially a car as fast as that. It's like night and day. I do not like the fact that he's come in only because he brings along lots of money. From a business point of view, that's brilliant. Williams will want that because they know Felipe Massa, he's a very, very, very good driver. Obviously, he's quite old. He was meant to retire, but he's come back because obviously Bottas left. But Massa will bring a lot out of that car, and I think he can definitely show Lance Stroll the ropes. But I really do not like the fact that he's crashed so much and people are still trying to give him respect. I don't like it. I don't like that. Apart from the crashes, reliability of the engine and the car itself was otherwise generally fine. The speed of the car, 122.076, was decent, especially on softs, because obviously they were the slowest of all the tyres used, unless people use. I'm pretty certain people use the medium actually now. I think, but of those compounds, the dry compounds, they were on the slower tyres. So that is actually a decent lap time, but again, there's so much still to see, so much still to expect from Williams, so we can't really give too much of an assessment just yet. In fact, test 2 will be a huge showing, and actually I saw that today Massa did like over 100 and I think did like 160 laps. That may be completely wrong, but he did a hell of a lot of laps in one day. So I don't want to talk too much about that because that's for another podcast, but yeah, don't worry too much about Williams. Don't discount them just yet. There's a long way to go still for them. McLaren. They did 208 laps, which is, I think, the second least amount of laps anyone did. Their fastest was a 122.576. Stoffel Van Dorn did that on the Ultra Softs, which are meant to be the fastest tyres they've got, just about. Slow, unreliable. Honestly, God. Where do we start with McLaren? What do you say about McLaren? Last year they were really low down in the standings. 2 years ago they were second to last. They're not in a good state. People expected them to be better this year, and from testing or test 1 so far, they meet the expectations of doing pretty poor. Not only did they have the second slowest speed, they did the second least amount of laps. Reliability is still an issue, and though speed in itself, raw speed, is a massive issue, reliability has to come first, and they still don't have that. In fact, they were forced to run the car on a low engine speed simply because they just couldn't trust the reliability. You got to bear in mind that that means that therefore the times that they posted were naturally going to be slower. But, you know, Australia is only a couple of weeks away. They're going to be racing Melbourne in a couple of weeks, and they don't have reliability, clearly. And they've been forced to make the car slower than it needs to be. They've got a slow car, and they're being forced to make it slower. Not a good sign. The pressure building on McLaren and Honda in particular is insane. The relationship they've got with each other is... I can't really explain it. Eric Boulier kind of laughed off when they said, are they going to like divorce as a result of what's going on at the moment? He literally laughed and was like, no, that's just not going to happen. But it's clear pressure is at critical. They're really struggling. They've got to pull someone out of the bag pretty quick. In fact, I think they need to do everything possible to simply just keep the car reliable until the next break they have, which is like midway through the season, because they need to invest a lot into that car. They've got a lot of work to do. You can't count it out just yet, because obviously once reliability comes, a lot more things will come with it. There's still testing to do. You know, they didn't run the car on maximum engine speeds, and but you know, I don't know. I'm a huge McLaren fan. Really love the company. But I'm so cynical of Honda. I just don't think they're good enough, and I'll say it's as blatant as that. Toro Rosso, now they only did 183 laps. The fastest lap time they had was Danny Kvyat of a 122.956 on the softs. They had very little running. In fact, they're a very small team. In fact, they're basically junior Red Bull. They don't have that much money. They don't have that much time. They don't have that many resource points. They don't have much at their disposal. They're the little brother team, and that really shows. They just simply did not have the opportunity to do the testing. They were waiting around for a long time where they literally weren't able to test. So the fact that they only did 183 laps looks kind of bad, but it's just a generally underwhelming performance from them throughout testing one. I wouldn't think too much of it. They haven't tested the car that much. They haven't pushed the car at all. We don't know what to expect. Haas, or Haas, I think so, Haas, they did 343 laps. The fastest lap time was Romain Grosjean, a 122.118. That was on the super softs. Decent. 343 laps is a hell of a lot of laps, and they've got a used Ferrari engine in there. They're basically a Ferrari B team, but who cares? That's probably the best way to get into Formula 1 in itself. The best way to make your car competitive from the start, because otherwise you're just not going to get money. The fact they did so many lap times makes the car seem pretty reliable, and I think it's fair to say they definitely are. I think I'm right in saying they did have a couple... Yeah, they did have an electrical fault. It died out pretty quickly, not much of a problem. It's very likely that they're just going to be another, like, same as last year from where it seems, that they're going to be like a midway team, which, you know, I mean, they're new. That literally is their second season, something like that. Like, that's solid. Like, you can't criticize them the same that you would criticize McLaren or Williams or Force India. Like, they're all mid-table teams. Force India is more of a team that's trying to push up to Williams and trying to be the fourth best team. But you can't count Haas in that region just yet. But a decent test one for them. Renault, now they did 293 laps. Not bad. In fact, that's respectable. Jolyon Palmer did the fastest lap time for them of a 121.396 on the softs. That's not bad at all. Reliability did seem bad at them at first, because I think when they first started, they had I think it was electrical faults or something. They had a couple of faults, but as the 4 days progressed, that got better and better. So it was shaky, but they kind of grew into it, and actually they seem okay. Their soft time was actually, in fact, really solid. In fact, I think it was competitive with the top 3 teams, which is obviously Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. However, they're not going to be like that throughout the season. Renault, the Renault itself, that entire team, will not be competing with the top 3 teams. It just shows that maybe they have decent. It just shows that they have got decent speed effectively. The relationship between Julian Palmer and Hulkenberg actually seems pretty good. I think they're both. I think it was quoted. I think it was Palmer who said it, or maybe Hulkenberg. He literally said that he's really happy. That Hulkenberg actually really wanted to go to Renault because he wanted to be in in an actual car brand team. There's just so much more money, so much more opportunity, so much more room to maneuver. It's a much better environment because teams dedicated teams like Force India, they don't have the money, they don't have the sponsorships that the big companies will have. So Hulkenberg's very, very happy sitting in that seat, and so is Jolyon Palmer, it seems. And finally, Sauber. Now they did 349 lap times. 349, wow, that is a really, really solid amount. Ericsson was the fastest for them on a 121.824, which was the super softs. They had lots and lots of running, which is a brilliant sign for that team. They really don't want to be the back markers in F1. Nobody wants to be. It's probably going to be McLaren or them, but they really don't want to be. And actually from test 1, it looks really, really good for them. It's worth mentioning that though that lap time of 121.824 on the super soft is actually really decent, that pace compared to the others on super softs is actually about like 2 seconds off them. So though it looks good, in other context it might not be so good. But hey, look, let's say for now it's actually not that bad. You got to remember that engine is a year old. They're a small team, they can't afford brand new engines every year. They absolutely no chance, in fact. So for now, I'd say they did a pretty decent job. In fact, the fact that they've got so much running in, that's a brilliant sign. That's fantastic for them. But crucially, test 2 will be huge for them. In fact, it will be huge for quite a few teams. That's pretty much it. That's me summing up all the teams so far in the first wave of testing. As I said earlier, the second wave of testing is going on at the moment. There's a lot of things that has already happened which I would love to discuss right now, but I'm just going to save that for the next episode. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed making it. I've had a lot of fun. I hope you guys have had too. I have no idea how long this video will be. Probably I'm going to guess about 20 minutes long. I don't know. I'll edit it and find out. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have enjoyed this, please like, share it. That would be amazing. If you subscribe, that'd be awesome. Comment below what you want from this channel. As I told you at the beginning, the format of this channel will be done, which is it'll mainly kick off really once testing's over and the race weekends are in, because then I'll be having an episode guaranteed every single week, and I will be doing little other channels and other videos rather, and discussion and stuff in between and so on, and maybe a couple challenges on like the F1 2016 game and so on. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So as I said, please like, subscribe if you really liked it, share it, comment below. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you later. I need a drink. I'm basically Jack Buckley.